So, welcome all to this session. This webinar is the third webinar on the framework of the OS Trails Interoperability Framework webinars that we had this week. First, we had the webinar on the FAIR-IF and on Monday, then the webinar on DMP-IF. And today we're going to have the webinar on the SKG-IF titled A Unified Framework to Ensure SKG Information Exchange and Semantic Interoperability. You can find the past events using the links that shared with you on the chat, on the Trails events. And today we have here Andrea Mannocci from the National Research Council of Italy, who will introduce the main components of the SKG-IF, namely the core data model, the interoperability framework, the API specification, and the device mechanism to customize and extend the SKG-IF according to community needs and requirements. So with this, I would like to give the floor to Andrea. Hi, Andrea.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tassos. And thanks everybody for joining today. So the other thing I would like to add to the introduction that Tassos made is that I am a co-chair of this working group under the RDA Research Data Alliance Shield around the SKG-IF interoperability, SKG interoperability framework, and I'm also taking part of the project Australis, but I have these two different hats here, right? Co-chair and project participant. Then, so if I had to pin in time the precise moment where everything, all this crazy journey about interoperability started, I would point everybody to this paper here. I think this dates back in 2020, and with these colleagues, we were back then we were talking about open science graphs. Then the terminology scholarly knowledge graph, scientific knowledge graph picked up for some reason, so we had to drop that. But back then we were talking about open science graphs, and this was the first work where we were envisioning interoperability across these different sources, platforms, initiatives, call them the way you prefer. But the main reason we were thinking mainly about scholarly communication. So we were trying to come up with the framework for classifying sources, initiatives, platforms, services that were modeling this kind of information out there. And we were mostly advocating for interoperability, a seamless exchange of information back and forth, in order to have this local knowledge shared and not dispersed once an initiative ceases to exist. And we had in mind, for example, Microsoft Academic Graph. At some point, it has been phased out, which was a shame for our community, and we still miss it. So it was interoperability. The way we saw it was kind of way that could lessen the effects, the bad effects of this sudden withdrawal, and for sure, like put into system the local enrichments and local knowledge that's produced locally in some sources, which is not available in others. So, as I was saying, like the SKG-IF has been developed under the RDA umbrella. It first was incubated as self-organized task forces under the interest group around open science graphs for fair data. This is the link if you want to check. We are still active. We meet, I think, every month or so. So our activities about the interoperability framework started in 2022 and were officially endorsed as a working group, not an interest group, in June 2023. We were intended to wrap up initially in December 2024, so last year, but we negotiated an extension until end of June 2025, so we are almost getting there, in order to develop a few other things that we thought were burning, or in any case were really sensible to be touched when wrapping up the working group in the first place. And most of them come from project setups such as Austrades, and this is where Austrades comes into play and actually made most of the contributions into this work, which was started previously under the RDA. So the main motivation, as I was saying when I was pointing at the paper, so it's like this one. So when we started to think about scholarly knowledge graphs at the beginning, we had a plethora of different sources. Some of them are paywalled, some of them are open, and whenever two different sources or initiatives want to or are in need to draw collaboration among them, they need to establish peer-to-peer kind of mappings between the local models. And if since there are many sources out there, these can lead to explosive numbers of one-on-one mappings, and that's really not the way we want to go, because for example, I am working around the OpenAir graph, and every time that there is something new to be ingested, or there's something source you want to do comparison with, you always need to mix and match the information, and this is always a drawback because it takes a lot of time. And thinking to do that for among all of them in a kind of full mesh fashion, that it's really remarkable kind of work, and it's really repetitive, and it doesn't bring anything new, anything valuable, but it takes away a lot of time. And so it would be much more preferable to have a kind of common way to talk in a federated in a kind of federated way, or if you can think about lingua franca, so to speak, so that everybody it can understand everybody, pretty much as we are doing now, because I'm talking in English rather than Italian. And so the whole picture in a nutshell would be like this. We were thinking to slide a little interoperability layer in every single SKG willing to join the party, and the interoperability layer is mostly intended to translate the local data model into an agreed and shared upon the different parties, and expose the same kind of information that are available locally into different ways, through APIs and through data files, such as omni-comprehensive dumps of the whole all the whole information at a given time. And so the SKG-IF, it's no magic. There's no central implementation. There's no central body that actually takes care of running the service or the infrastructure for making the dialogue between different SKGs possible. It's just it's a bit reductive, but it is a set of guidelines. So it's the grounding rules that someone that wants to be an SKG that wants to be interoperable towards others should comply to if it want to be SKG-IF compliant. So we have a new online documentation here. The QR code will point you there. So it's new, this website, because before June 2024, we used to have a first iteration of the interoperability framework, and after that, especially after the input from Australians, we happened to redesign, refactor everything and especially implement a sound semantic layer. And if you want to follow or join us on RDA, please do so. We have this, the working group is anyone, I mean, it's open, anyone can join. The thing is that we are wrapping up soon, but once we will wrap up, we will not disappear. The working group, I think, will be flagged as in maintenance mode, pretty much as any other working group under RDA does. And once in maintenance mode, we will continue to meet and possibly in a more relaxed basis. Now we are missing every 2 weeks, but once in maintenance mode, we will continue working on our baby and trying to support all the requests for extensions, for example. So in a nutshell, the overview of the SKG-IF, it's like this. So at the very bottom, we do have the data model, and the data model has been developed with the semantic web technology kind of language. These 6 boxes that are underneath, I didn't put any text, not to be redundant. It will become evident afterwards, but these are ontological submodules. And then on top of the data model, we do have the interoperability framework, which is the way that that the data model is serialized into JSON, and the format that should be complied in order to have objects and information exchanged over the wire. And this is complemented by the JSON LD context and shackle. JSON LD context, we'll see afterwards, it's a way, and shackle together are the way that we have and SKG-IF is providing in order to be to ensure that semantic interoperability is granted, that information is provided in an unambiguous way. On top of that, we do have the open API specifications, which are so all these interoperability framework, JSON LD context, and shackle together, they define the specification they draw. It's taken up to the API level, and where we do have a contract in terms of endpoints and format of objects to be exchanged via web services in REST. And everything is flanked by extensions. So extensions can extend the core bit of the SKG-IF, which is everything I was discussing before, can extend it and inject new kind of ways to adapt the framework to particular needs. We will see that later. Australis contributed directly into the creation of the open API specifications and contributed, and is still ongoing. Both the things are still ongoing with the extensions as well, and provided feedback to into the discussion about the data model So in terms of properties about the core entities and similar aspects. So during the whole life cycle of this working group, we followed a very pragmatic. We tried to follow. I mean, in every aspect, a very pragmatic methodology. And the leitmotif here was, do not try to reinvent the wheel. So try to reuse most of the things that have been done already by someone else out there, without rebranding or reinventing necessarily new concept, overloaded concepts for the same things. And since the beginning, we onboarded and engaged with major SKG providers, for example, DataSite, OpenEC, Crossref, OpenAlex, OpenCitations, and Eurocris, Serif mostly, that translates to is the data model of CRIS systems. And we analyzed the locally adopted data models in order to find commonalities in terms of entities and properties and relations of such entities. And we were always making pragmatic choices for inclusion, at least in the first phase, when modeling the information of that to be included in the interoperability framework. And more recently, when we were devising the semantic layer, we tried to, again, not reinventing the wheel by remixing and finding already available ontologies, for example, sparrow ontologies, and trying not to release overloaded concepts. Redefining, for example, relations, or redefining entities that are already available. The core model has 6 core entities, and again, it's from these, which is it was initial arbitrary choice. It is evident the focus that we had, at least in the first phase, on scholarly communication. So we decided to model research products that can be of 4 types: research literature, conference papers, journal papers, technical reports, white papers, position papers, and so on, research data, research software, and other, for example, presentation, which kind of escape the other 3 classes. So other, it's like a fallback classification for anything, any research product that doesn't really stick to the other 3. Then we have agent. An agent is an individual or a person or an organization or any other kind of entity that's able to contribute, publish, create, disseminate research products. And we have data sources, which is a service or platform where a research product is stored, preserved, and made discoverable and accessible to the broader public. And when I say a research product, I mean it's metadata and files. And then we have venue, which might sound like quite overlapping with data source, but is actually a very different concept. So I will make you an example. Venue here, the way we intend it, it's an entity that models the publishing gateway. So that is used and chosen by an agent in order to make that research product published and available to others. And the difference stands is so the venue, is the publishing gateway. So when I do have a paper, for example, that's been published in a STI conference, and an STI doesn't have proceedings with Springer or any other publisher. It has proceedings on Zenodo. So in that case, the publishing gateway, for me, the one I picked, it's the conference itself. So that's the venue. While the data source, which is the place where the descriptive metadata about my paper are saved and perceived and made discoverable, that's Zenodo. So that's why we keep them, we decided to have 2 different different entities to model these kind of things. Sometimes they do have the same. These two data source and venue, there could be actually the same kind of thing, but it's not necessarily true all the time. So better safe than sorry. It was from a conceptual level, it was clearer and more right to have them modeled this way. Then the last two is about grant and topic. Grant describes the money flowing into the system by funding bodies that are agent, if a funding body is an agent itself, and that are awarded to other agents in order to bring forward research, eventually producing research products. And then topics, it's about scientific disciplines, subjects, or keywords that are potentially relevant for research products. Again, here, research product, if it looks like the first class citizen out of the most important one out of the six, because we had this really scholarly communication focus at the beginning, but this is not true anymore. I mean, we are in full open science now. There are other things that might that are relevant, such as services, research infrastructures, open peer reviews, and all these, which is really relevant to us as well, at the moment is left to the ground of extensions. And I will describe that afterwards. So the core model, the format of reference is JSON LD. So is the way that JSON provides in order to, is the way that you can plug semantic layer into JSON. And by design, you also end up in having data that can be triplified in RDF, and that's not ambiguous in terms of semantics whenever you lay out the information. And we adopted, when describing the format on the website, a field by field approach, such as this one. So for example, when describing the duration property of a grant, the duration it includes two other properties, sub properties, which are about the start and the end. By the way, pretty much everything except for the IDs in the data model, all the top layer informations are optional. And this has been relaxed intentionally because we had certain use cases where data sources couldn't adopt SKG-IF because certain properties were mandatory, and this would prevent them from sharing anything altogether. So, for example, here the duration is optional, which means that if you don't have duration, but you have other informations about a grant, that's totally fine. You still can adopt the SKG-IF format in order to share anything else you have about grants, but the duration. The reason why certain information it's mandatory, for example, start here, is because once you have, provided you have duration information, which is optional, but you do have, at least you should provide us with the starting date. Then the end, in this case, is optional. Again, this was a choice. So JSON LD, as I was saying, JSON is the, as you were seeing here in the example, in this snippet here, you see JSON format kind of a JSON format kind of thing. So, but the way JSON is made semantically interoperable is through the JSON LD context. And the JSON LD context is basically the place where all the used ontologies are imported, and is the place where any possible key. So these are here on the left are all the ontologies that are, not all of them, but there are parts of the ontologies that are imported by the context. And here on the right, you see that there is a mapping between any single key. For example, author, it says is a pro author. So it maps the key that the JSON the SKGIF compliant JSON can use to the relevant ontology. And this provides and solves any kind of ambiguity regarding the information that's provided. And all these is complemented by Shackle, so which is the other bit that completes the conformity checks of the data exchanged over the wire to the data model. So it provides ontology checks for the ontological alignments in terms of domain and range of properties and relations. It performs cardinality checks and checks towards the vocabularies. The last point is actually will come at a later stage, because at the moment we are limiting to the first two, but at some point we will introduce into Shackle also the controlled vocabulary checks. At the moment, these are controlled vocabularies, and whenever we have an enumeration, for example, they are documented in the documentation. So on documentation pages, you see that, but there's no systematic check on Shackle that reflects this kind of constraint. Then we do have at the moment on the website, we do have described these ones, I call them always vanilla resolvers. And this comes from the first iteration of the working group. So at the beginning, we couldn't possibly solve all the problems about the APIs. We didn't really have the time for that. So last year in 2024, we decided to provide specification about resolvers as well, only those. So we had basically 3 endpoints described. One about the kind of ID schemes that the endpoint is willing to resolve, and the other 2 for getting a single shot resolution or bulk resolution in order to have the providing an ID and getting back the SKG-IF compliant representation of it, or a bulk of resolution in the similar fashion. But now, so since June 2024, when we started talking with GraphOS, we had more things coming. So we moved to an open API kind of way of documenting the endpoints and the format of JSON flying on the wire. So the format of the messages exchanged over the API. And this translates into a YAML file that provides the description for all these things. So all the endpoints, all the possible kind of parameters that could be passed to the endpoints, and the format of the messages that can be exchanged back and forth. And so in this sense, the YAML file, it's like a contract that you should follow in order to implement SKG-IF compliant APIs. So, I mean, if you are familiar with API development, usually what developers do is about this code first approach. So first, a developer would implement, so write the code implementing the endpoint and the messages and the message format to be exchanged, and then after with annotations on the code, and then provided the annotations, the tool would extract the YAML specification out of it. In this case, because there's no central, as I was saying at the beginning, there's no central implementation for the SKG-IF. We are not providing the implementation. We are providing the contract that people willing to be SKG-IF compliant should attend to. So in this case, we adopted this API first approach, where the OpenAPI YAML document is created up front, and that is the binding contract that any implementer should follow in order to be compliant. And in this case, for example, Open Citations are willing to provide their own implementations of the SKG-IF Open API specs. So at some point later, I mean, once we are done with the first release of the Open API in June, later than that, downstream to that, the first implementation will start, and this will, of course, have I mean, reflect on project setups. For example, RaspOS, Ostrates, and Scilake, which are the first three main projects that are onboarding SKG-IF in their proposals in order to have a common shared format between the SKGs that are taking part of the project. But there are other two projects that I'm aware of. One is called Graphia, the other one is called Lumen, which are willing to, or they are exploring SKG-IF as the common language for achieving interoperability. So again, here it's I don't think it's visible, but once you have the URL of the YAML file, it is possible to use general purpose tools, for example, these stoplight elements, to provide to parse the YAML and provide like this documentation where you can play with the endpoints and even get mock data out of it. So it's like, if you are familiar with Swagger, this is an equivalent tool. But yeah, basically it's like it's a web page where you can start exploring the endpoints and the formats of the message exchanged. And what the APIs are actually describing is about is a superset of what we were doing with the vanilla resolvers that I introduced before. So we do have this get by PID. It's still there, but this is flanked with kind of search filters by term, where you look for specific keywords into titles, into author names, subjects, abstracts, and so on and so forth, or where you can filter by relations. So, for example, checking if a DOI if a given DOI is related in a certain way to an object, then return that object to me. Otherwise, just filter it out. As I was saying, the release for the Open API specs is marked in June 2025. We will release the YAML file on this page. If you actually go here, there is a link to a working document that Renault and the other people from Ostrates that are taking care of these task are using to track and the current status and all the burning issues. And just let me also take the opportunity to advertise this hackathon that Renault is organizing in Grenoble in June. It's going to be an on-site event, so there will be, I think, 1 or 2 hybrid sessions about the general presentation of the hackathon setup, but it's going to be an on-site event mainly. I won't be able to join because on 12th I have another commitment, but If you're around, if you're willing to participate, then do register here, and we will be more than happy to have you there. I'll try to join remotely. I don't know if it will be possible, but I already informed Reno about that. And then, so the last part here is about extensions. So extensions, as I was saying, so everything I described so far is part of the core. And extensions, if you remember the first picture, is flanking everything. And again, extensions were something that project setups that are using SKG-IF push for in order to make SKG-IF usable and customizable to their needs. So extensions primarily act as, you can see them as plugins for extra behaviors or properties that can enhance core entities or core APIs. And these extensions capture community-driven concepts. And this translates mainly to the participation guidelines. So the first one is about shared interest and need, and the second one is about non-interference. Shared interest need, is there because we need collective interest or requirements rather than individual needs. So we didn't want to allow anyone, like single person, single entity, to wake up in the morning and say, I have this specific, very peculiar requirement that I'd like to address, and then I'm going to need an extension of the SKG-IF because I don't like it. We need a collective, community-driven need in order to back the proposition of an extension. And then the second requirement is that an extension should not interfere the core, which is avoiding disruption of core entities and APIs. So extensions cannot possibly provide shortcuts to something that someone doesn't like really already present in the core. For example, I will make a topic is it's an entity itself. So I couldn't possibly come up with an extension that introduced topics as an additional property of research products that would break the core. That core is a contract. So you can only apply for extensions as long as you have community needs behind your shoulders, and you are not replacing, moving, or interfering with the information that's already modeled within the core, but you are rather adding new concepts rather than moving them. So an extension can do essentially two things. So it's on the core model level, it can add properties and relation to already present core entities or introduce new entities themselves. And here I can make two examples. For example, the a new entity or relation to a core entity. It could be the email address of the corresponding author, which is something we don't model, but it could be valuable in certain contexts, and it's eligible for an extension, for example. A new entity could be a peer review or an annotation of a product. And in that sense, it would be a new entity on its own with its own properties and relations with core entities, for example, research product. Then an extension can extend the core APIs. And again, this can be done in two different flavors, via customization of the behavior of core APIs by, for example, by adding new HTTP parameters. A new filter that's not in the core specification could be added by an extension. And the other way is about introducing new methods and endpoints. For example, to return a new entity that the extension injected into the data model. We decided to opt for a centralized governance and structured lifecycle rather than having, for example, the GitHub fork mechanism in place. I mean, it's still there. You cannot, I don't think you can prevent people from forking repositories on GitHub, but that's not the preferred way to interplay with the SKG-IF and the working group. So the workflow that we are describing in the extension auto is about applying for an extension via GitHub issue. And as a reaction to that, there will be a dedicated repository assigned for that extension with a prefix and with a URL where basically all the documentation about that extension will be made available. And this is done by using GitHub Actions, Jekyll, and Markdown. So so to have basically the same look and feel. What I did I included every repository of extension is included into this continuous integration, continuous development workflow where every commit that you push remotely on GitHub then triggers a recompile of the whole code base and regenerate the web pages online. And the trick here is that an extension will be the mini website of an extension will be hidden at initially until it reaches a level of maturity adequate enough to be publicly accessible to anybody. So this happens when the RDA working group finally endorsed the extension as an official SKG-IF extension and becomes evident on the website. And then possible post-endorsement actions are about cherry picking properties, entities, or API extensions back into the core, and this makes sense if you think about the initial setup we had. So we had in mind scholarly communication at the beginning. So we intentionally left out sensible entities, for example, services or research infrastructures that could be modeled by somewhere, but not so many data models that we took into consideration at the beginning. And but again, after an extension is developed and after it picks up within the relevant community, the working group is open to cherry pick any kind of information that's modeled there and transfer that to the core, because there will be a critical mass of use cases supporting that change, that addition. The extension side, it's mostly driven by the feedback from us at the moment to provide better guidance for extension proponents. And better in the development. So I'm working in Sandbox, so in a way that the documentation line about the extensions will be also a kind of a toy example where everything is contained, and people that are willing to submit a request for extensions can look for anything they need. For example, just a small bit, you need to provide an OWL ontology, and this is something you can do through Protégé. which is ontological design, ontological engineering tool. Can you still hear me, by the way? Because I think I have
yes, everything works.
Okay, great. Because my earplugs are leaving me. The first extension that has been under development is this one. It's called Array SKG, which is about research assessment, and it's mainly injecting research metrics and indicators and badges into research products, and this has been developed within the other project that's adopting SKG-IF, which is called GraspOS, and it's about responsible research assessment. And then Tassos.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea, for the interview and for breaking down, all this issue about, how you have developed so far, the SKG-IF, because there is a lot of work taking place in many different working groups, projects, and so on. And of course, highlighting the contribution of Australis in this process. I will open directly the floor to the audience because we have less than 15 minutes. So please feel free directly, to open your microphones and if you have anything to ask, to comment. Okay, I have many questions, but okay, I will start, from the first one, in case that there are other questions from the audience. So you mentioned before that you are trying to address the requirements of the communities, of the research communities, by adding these extensions. And you are taking into account that in order, to have to translate something from the requirements to an extension to the SKGs, that should be like an established community. But as far as I understand, so far there are 5 organized communities, the science cluster communities, the ESPR communities, and in that way they can express, their interests. How about communities that they do not really have, this kind of organization so far? How they will be able, to include, their requirements within the SKG-IF?
Well, in that case, and so extension development and the working group are co-living, right?
Yes.
They're not mutually exclusive. So say that you do have certain burning themes that you would like to discuss about the SKG-IF, but you don't have a burning an underlying community supporting them. You could still join the working group itself and bring up your issues in there. It's the working group is still a channel of communication. So you can you could send an email or join one of the meetings and express your doubts, concerns, or modifications, right? The main intent of the extensions was precisely to decouple the development of particular needs out and offload them from the working group, because the discussion on the working group it's already loaded and has many things to take care about, and having to discuss also that aspects within the working group that would be simply unfeasible. And so we prefer to have this kind of parallel development, tackling specific aspects that can be as fast-paced as proponents want, to be then fed back to the core. It was mostly that. But say that you are alone and you have something that doesn't adapt to you, you could still participate to the working group and make that explicit there.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think Dan Broder has a question. Dan?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Andrea, could you say something about the level of expertise that's expected from people that will work on extensions and the say examples? You mentioned one, but will you offer more examples for communities that who need to create those extensions?
So what I'm doing now, it's so I'm trying to. I am myself getting acquainted to certain technologies, right? Because I always assisted Silvio, which is another co-chair, in creating the extension for GraspOS, but I never did the whole job on my own. So there are certain steps that are not acquainted firsthand. So, for example, ontological development with Protégé. It's something that's it is something that I'm doing the first time for creating this thing. So my intention here is about providing guidance in terms of to do in the auto for extensions. So in this extension sandbox, it will be explicit that you need, for example, Protégé, and Protégé works in a certain way. So it will point to the documentation and other relevant articles, not scientific ones, but like for users, in order to develop the ontology. And then, all this is done. It's done done in order to produce an OWL, so the ontology file, and from that moment on, it's again small steps in order to produce the documentation. Is not.
But also the use of Protégé could be helped by providing some templates, examples that are close to reality, right? You can create trivial examples that give some insight in the mechanisms, but you can also provide some real-world examples about extensions that will probably really help people to create their own.
The extensions I was thinking about, is about annotations. So annotation, I think is a simple concept to grasp. So it could be even a peer review for that matter. But anyway, the idea of the extension that I was willing to implement, it's about having a new entity, which is called annotation, which has a textual representation providing commentary to a product, let's say. And then there will be relations between product and annotation. So the idea is that once you look at the documentation for these annotations in the extension template, you will see that what are you expected to produce, and you will also see the process according to which that has been produced, including Protégé and relevant steps in there. Protégé is not the best user-friendly interface that I've seen so far. I think it's a bit. It's one of the standards in ontology development. So I will not blame Stanford University for that, but it could be improved, and let's say the interface in a number of ways. I think it could be. It's not super intuitive if you open that without any kind of guidance. But once you know where to click and what kind of buttons and levers to pull, I think it is doable. And then, of course, like if an extension needs some major overhaul of the ontology, then it would probably make sense to have someone which is acquainted, more than acquainted with semantic web within the team. But that's that's feasible. I mean, it's I think it's
well, we will try it
every
out.
project has one.
We
Yeah.
will try it out.
So, due to the fact that we have only 4 minutes, and there is another question. So, Andrea, could you please check? There is a question regarding the pattern in the chat. Question regarding the pattern, the resolve schema.
Yeah, so this resolve will probably be replaced by the new APIs. So I wouldn't, if I were you, Olaf, I wouldn't bother too much. But in any case, the simple answer to your question is that yes, the colon would be part of the request. So you would have in the first place, according to the first specification, you would have to specify the schema that you're willing to resolve to, colon the identifier you want to resolve.
Okay, thank you
and
very
then
much.
I see a comment from Alison. Alison, I'm so sorry about. I know that you have to request for extensions that are sitting there for months. It's a shame. The reason why I haven't. So I'm putting an agenda point. It's periodically pushed back because we have so many things to discuss, and the other reason is that yes, there's a lot. There is a lot, and I didn't want to discuss before providing the due guidance, as Dan was saying before. Because the only extension that came through so far is the one from Grasp OS, and the reason why it's so is because we have Silvio, and Silvio comes from the semantic web technology, so he knows really well how to move and how to get started. And we were not sure about the other requests. We have other 3, to be honest. It's 2 from fair sharing, and 1 from is about geolocation for research products.
Okay, so I think this is more managerial for the project itself. So thank you. And I would like if you could please share the screen again, because I have an issue with my screen. Just to
you glitch.
Yeah. So you can share your screen. The open call. Okay, yes. Okay. Just to mention that we are running the mentorship program right now in Australia. So the idea is that if you're interested, in what we are doing in terms of, as you have already seen in these 3 webinars, we are developing, the architecture and, the interoperability frameworks and the specifications in order to make the whole research ecosystem interoperable, and to exchange information, seamless. So we will have, this mentorship program for people interested, to upscale themselves in the fields of DMPs, SKGs, and FAIR tools. So you can join. There is an open call for mentees right now until May 9th. So I think that you can find also the link in the chat. The program itself will run for 1 year. I think it starts on this June and will be until the next June 2026. And experts from Australis, people participating also in the webinars, will guide you, in what we are developing, and how you could be able, to adopt and implement this kind of commons, I would say, in your environments. Yes, with this, next slide, please. Yes, and the next one, and the final. So I would like to thank, first of all, Andrea, for being here and explaining the whole process about, the whole work about the SKG-IF, either, taking place outside or within the Australis project. I think it was a very nice overview of the whole work. And of course, the whole consortium for the partners that have contributed in many different ways, in order to materialize what we have promised within the proposal, and to make it true. And finally, this next final slide, I would like to thank all of you, the audience, for being here and for your questions and the discussion. And of course, with this, I would like to mention that we are closing the first phase of this Austrian interoperability webinar series. You can find all the webinars. I will copy paste here. Sorry, I will try to copy paste here. Yes, you can find also the previous webinars as well as this one in our website. And of course, you can stay connected with our students by following us on the social media or subscribing to our newsletter, to get the latest updates about the project. Thank you all for being here once again. Bye.
Bye-bye.